All right, time now for Can't Take the Heat, built by the Home Depot. The Miami Hurricanes have been playing with their food all year long, and this time they got some food poisoning, thanks in large part to a heavy dose of run game by the Yellow Jackets of Georgia Tech. Guys, we have been conditioned to just expect that Miami has a comeback in them.
Yeah.
Because they have done it time and time again, whether it be against Cal, Louisville, Duke, they were behind. Virginia Tech,
right.
All of these games for Miami, they have been able to mount comebacks because of the quarterback in Cam Ward. Today, the chickens came home to roost, and Miami no longer undefeated. So, with that being said, what does this loss say about Miami, and what does it say about their hopes to go to the college football playoff now, Scoop?
It says exactly what we thought about Miami coming into this game, if you ask me. Miami had the #1 offense in the entire country. But when you talk about defensive efficiency rating, they were ranked 70th in the country, which to me says your defense was poor. Your defense couldn't really do much. And what they had to do was improve their defense overall in order to be a championship contender team. What have they done 3 times this season? They've had 3 double-digit comebacks, which has led to wins, and very squeaky wins. So now, Miami, you get against a team that slows down your offense, and you lose the game, and you've been playing with fire the whole season. So to me, Matt, that says you were messing around and you found out.
Yeah, I mean, the issue, there's so many things that we can go when we're talking about Miami.
Yeah.
And I guess the first part is we never saw any other aspect of this team really develop because it was just so easy for you to say, well, don't worry, Cam will get us out of it.
We'll figure it out.
Right?
Big fact.
And the defense, you know, for as many players that they have that you think are talented football players, just the open receivers in critical situations that Georgia Tech had open down the field, it's unbelievable how we have guys that are open in these big third down situations, right, against a team that's been run heavy. But to give up 270 yards on the ground, to go to be 9 of 14 conversion rate on third down for Georgia Tech, you know, to dominate time of possession, to be 4-4 in the red zone, you know, that's the most disappointing thing. And the fact that, you know, Damian Martinez is a really good running back.
Excellent.
You know how highly I think of him, and I think that he is going to be a guy that plays on Sundays for a good portion of time. And yet, we've never really seen them have the patience or the will to say, we're going to just run the football and control the game that way. And again, because Cam Ward and the skill group and Restrepo and George and all those guys, they make it too easy on them as play callers, and it really hindered their development as an overall football team.
Now we had a conversation.
Which is crazy to say.
It's nuts, yeah.
You know, like, and I know how it is, but like 31 versus Duke, 45 versus Louisville, 38 versus Cal, 34 versus Virginia Tech.
It's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable, and we've seen what some of these other teams have done today, too, defensively, and the skill group that they have. And again, this is why I think sometimes people think that us in the ESPN world are biased to the SEC occasionally. Right?
One comment that Heather Dinich had on our Tuesday Rankings Reaction Show was, Miami is the best team that I don't trust.
Right.
And I felt that in my soul because the way that Miami was handling business was, it just wasn't sustainable. And when you look at what they needed to do to make the playoff, I said if they lost in the ACC title game, they still might not have a chance to make the playoff. And that was before this loss because who they had beat was not impressive yet.
Yeah.
And now those poor performances that you had have caught up to you. When you look at Miami and the way that they handle their business on defense, they came into this game with the 8th best rushing defense in the entire country. But teams weren't really running the ball on them. They were getting an average of 26 rushing attempts per game against them, which is by and large the second fewest in the country. So Georgia Tech came into the game and said, we're about to run this ball. Now let's take a look at what some of the things that we saw on the internet. Yeah, everyone was stunned by this. Down goes Miami. They can't handle a few Yellow Jackets. Undefeated season gone. We love seeing the U back, but seeing them lose like that is upsetting. But Sam, their path to the ACC title game now. Let's make it clear for the people out there to understand.
It's very, very narrow, and they need some help. They held their future in their own hands heading into the final 3 games of the regular season. That no longer is the case. the scenario is they need SMU to either lose a game. They would also need Pitt to kind of lose a game and get out of there. They need some help. And if Pitt goes undefeated, now Pitt has to play Clemson the rest of the way. They have to play them, I think it's next week or in 2 weeks.
So Pitt will get Clemson, and then they'll get Louisville the following week. If Pitt wins out from this point on,
they're in. Yeah.
They are in the ACC title game because they close out with Boston College. Still, Boston College could get them, who knows? But if Pitt wins out, they get into the ACC title game, and Miami does not get into the ACC title game because they lose the tiebreaker with Pitt. And Pitt's only loss of the season, you see it, is SMU.
And Miami does finish the season up in Syracuse, New York, and that's not a game that I'm going to say is an easy game to go win either for the Hurricanes. I do want to ask you real quick, Maddie, if Georgia Tech has kind of given everybody else in the country the recipe to beating Miami. It seems like it was the same recipe to beating Florida State at the start of the year, and that was to just keep possession, grind it out on the ground. Georgia Tech had 35 minutes of possession in this game. Miami had 25. Your final thoughts on this whole Miami situation and what we are seeing as from a team from them?
I think you bring up a great point, and this is something that we saw even in the Kentucky Ole Miss game earlier in the year, right?
Yeah.
Where a team was very aggressive and just being patient on the ground with their play calling, saying, we don't care if we're just getting 2 or 3 yards on the ground. We're just going to keep running the football. We're going to keep possessing the ball as much as we possibly can. Speed up the game, but also just take possessions and plays away from Cam Ward in that offense. And, you know, the biggest moments, I feel like, of the game were the start of the third quarter. Turnover on downs by Miami. Georgia Tech, 8-play, 61-yard drive. 21-10 is the score. Miami gets the ball back. They go 9 plays, 83 yards for the touchdown. So they get right back in to make it 21-16. But then they go for 2, which at that point, no. You do not do that. You kick the extra point, you take the points, because that's a momentum play that you are now giving back to Georgia Tech after driving the football the way that they did. But this is where Miami's defense did not respond. 9 plays, 75 yards to make it 28-16 lead. And from there, it was just too much for Miami to overcome at that point.
Yeah, and it's, again, Mario Cristobal is going to have to answer some questions this week. This is the second year in a row that Miami has lost to Georgia Tech.